Katie, let it out with Katie. Let it out with Katie Dalebout, enthusiast and curator of people and ideas you need to hear.
Hi, welcome back. You are listening to Let It Out with me. I'm your host, Katie Dalebout, and this is my podcast where I talk to fascinating people just like today's guest, Cheryl Miller Hauser, who you will hear all about in just a moment. But first, welcome. If you are new to the podcast, I'm so glad you found it. How did you find it? Let me know. Let's be friends on all of social media. I'm at Katie Dalebout. And if you've been listening for a long time, you know the drill. I talk to creative, fascinating people, and I learn from them, and I just connect with them. The podcast is so long, usually about 2 hours, so we get so cozy that we forget we're recording, and we just connect as people, and you guys all eavesdrop. It's great, sometimes even live when I record live episodes. This one was not recorded live. It was recorded live, but not with an audience, just Cheryl and I in her beautiful home on the Upper West Side of New York. Anyway, it was a great time. Cheryl is wonderful. You'll hear that in this episode. We have this great conversation where we cover career and parenting, and she gives advice for people who want to work in TV and film like she does. She also talks about feminism and relationships and bodies and being a woman in the world and so many things, feelings. I really enjoyed this conversation. We recorded it on a cozy afternoon this fall and ate a persimmon together after, which was one of the more lovely experiences I've had since moving to New York City. We talk about how we met, but shout out to my friend and previous podcast guest, Phoebe Lapine, for introducing us at her beautiful dinner party that she hosted, and Cheryl and I were sat next to each other. You'll love this episode. We talk about her deep experience producing and directing feature films and documentaries and web series and branded content and all types of content. We talk about how she started her career. We talk about her career, producing award-winning film and television. And the beginning part of this conversation focuses on her recent project called Generation Startup, that is a film that takes place in Detroit. And we talk quite a bit about it at the beginning, but we even talked more about it, which I edited out because it got a bit inside baseball. And so if you haven't seen the movie yet, you definitely should. It's on Netflix. Please watch it. And then I put that part that I edited out at the very end of this podcast. So once you have watched the movie, then you can go back and listen to that part because it's really just me, scratching an itch for myself, asking all of the indulgent questions I wanted to know about the film and the process and the making of the film. So you'll get to hear that at the end of the podcast if you want to stick around for that. If you haven't seen the film yet, maybe you won't find it as interesting, or maybe you'll listen to it and then it will really make you want to see the film. Either way, it's such a great conversation. I think you guys will really like it. I definitely did. I loved recording it, so I think you'll love listening to it. I hope you guys had a great holiday and are having a great holiday. This is that 1 week a year where nobody really knows what day it is and the world is kind of quieter, which I always really love and appreciate. And I hope you are cozy drinking hot cocoa somewhere. I'm recording this from Michigan. I'm still home there. I'm recording it the day after Christmas. I hope you guys had a great Christmas. Your time with your family was relaxing. If you were with family, if you weren't with family, I hope you were with friends. And if you were alone, I hope you felt cozy like that too. Whatever you were doing, I hope that you were happy and are happy. And I'm really glad you're spending the next hour or so, 2 hours with me if you finish listening to this podcast. All right. Thank you again for listening. Now let's talk about who makes this podcast possible. Let's thank the sponsors. This episode is brought to you in part by Juice Beauty. If you want to get 15% off your order from Juice Beauty, go to juicebeauty.com/letitout. No code needed. I love this brand, you guys. They sell them at Whole Foods. They're one of my favorite natural skincare lines ever. I love their makeup, especially. Their primer is my favorite in the world. And I had their founder, Karen, on the podcast. So you can go back and listen to that. But she believes that women shouldn't have to choose between beauty and their health. And that's why every product that they create has a superfood as the first ingredient, something really good for your face, like juice, just like green juice. That's why it's called Juice Beauty. And I love their stuff because not only is it good for your skin, not only does it nourish your skin when you're using it, but it actually works. And they even teamed up with Gwyneth Paltrow as Juice Beauty's creative director of their makeup. And they have all of this plant pigmented vegan makeup that I love. Check them out. Make sure you go to juicebeauty.com/letitout to get 15% off your order. Make sure you go there. Follow the link in the show notes. Thank you, Juice Beauty. This episode is also brought to you in part by Care of Vitamins. Care of Vitamins are my favorite vitamins. Not only do they source the highest quality ingredients in their supplements, but they deliver them to you in a really creative way. It's great for travel, especially this time of year when there's a lot of travel, because they come to you in a personalized container that even says your name on it with just the supplements that you need. So it's simple. You just go to their website. They ask you a series of questions about your diet, your health goals, your sleep, your poop. And from there, it curates the exact grouping of supplements that you need to feel your best. And then they deliver them to you in these personalized daily packs that are so convenient and easy to take on the go. And again, they use the best quality ingredients in their supplements. And you can actually save money by purchasing with Care of than purchasing everything in your local health food store. So check them out. I love their stuff so much. And here's the best part. You can get 50% off of your order by using the code Katie, that's my name, Katie, for 50% off your first order. So go to takecareof.com and make sure you enter the code Katie. Thank you so much, Care of, for sponsoring this week's episode. Thank you, Juice Beauty, and thank you for listening. Stick around to the end of the episode. I'm going to tell you the emoji and about next week's episode. Love you guys. Thanks for listening. Enjoy Cheryl. So, okay, let's start by telling everyone how we met. And we met a couple months ago now. I just moved to New York, and we bonded over so many things at dinner. It was so serendipitous that we were sat next to each other, and I just moved from New York at Phoebe's dinner. So how did you meet Phoebe? You guys both went to Brown, right?
We went to Brown, and I am part of a mentoring program. I was, the keynote speaker that January, and I had just left my job as head of production for a big production company, and I was saying like how ironic it is that I was speaking at that event because I didn't have a job, and that I had just left my job and was kind of figuring out what would come next for me.
Yeah.
And when I was done speaking, Phoebe made a beeline for me, and she said, "Can we have coffee? Can we have coffee? I just broke up with my business partner, and like I don't know what comes next for me." And I said, "Sure." So we had a breakfast and like spent 3 hours together. Spent a long time together.
Which is such a cool thing that you shared, because she did my podcast and told her entire life story. So go back to listen to that episode with Phoebe. But if you have already, you'll remember that point in her story where she talks about that part in her life before she started kind of where she is now and how influential that time was for her.
So, I mean, she says I'm a mentor to her, but she is to me too. I mean, it's very, like all mentoring relationships, the good ones, it's very much a two-way street, and I'm so inspired by Phoebe.
It was such a great dinner that we went to, and I was so happy to be there and to be seated by you and get to meet you. And we, like I said, bonded over the fact that you had just made a documentary that's so amazing called Generation Startup, which follows young entrepreneurs in the city of Detroit. And it looms around this fact that you mentioned to me that surprised me so much at dinner that night, that entrepreneurship between 18 to 34-year-olds is at a 25-year low. And that was so shocking to me. Can you talk about how you discovered that fact and why you wanted to explore it in film?
Yeah, so I know everyone is shocked when they hear that, because they think of millennials as incredibly entrepreneurial. But, while millennials may have blogs or be active on social media, it doesn't mean that they're launching companies or taking risks in other ways. And there are a whole host of reasons why young people are less entrepreneurial. We can get into that later. But the way I got into the movie was my son had just graduated from college, and he was a fellow in a fellowship program called Venture for America. And the founder, Andrew Yang, recognized that entrepreneurship was low among young people and wanted to create a funnel or a pathway for people to train as entrepreneurs. So they recruit college seniors, and they send them to startups around the country, not in New York, San Francisco, Boston, but places like Detroit, Cincinnati, Cleveland, Baltimore. So economically depressed cities across the U.S. And the fellows work at a startup for 2 years, and they basically train to be entrepreneurs. They see what it takes to launch a startup, and they're really thrown into the deep end. And VFA encourages them and helps them to come up with a business plan to launch their own companies, ideally in the city where they've been placed after the 2 years. So the startups that hire them pay them for those 2 years, and 25% of VFA fellows have launched their own companies. And so my son had just graduated from college. He was the hire number 11 at a rapidly growing startup, and he was put in charge of a lot of their marketing because he had been an English major, and he was having a really, really hard time because he was in way over his head. But
what city did he go to?
Providence.
Okay.
So he was in Providence. But he was learning so much. And so I met Andrew Yang, and I said, wow, you're changing my son's life. And I'm so inspired by what you're doing. And I would like to follow fellows in one of your cities.
Cool.
Because whether their companies succeed or fail isn't what really interests me.
Yeah.
What interests me is that here are young people who, when you graduate from college, it's the first time in your life when you don't have everything mapped out. I mean, up until then, that
after kindergarten,
right.
elementary school, there's always something.
Always something. So it is a huge void coming out of college. And it's also a time when people are really beginning to define, really, who am I? What's my place in the world? What are my values? And as Andrew says in the movie, our brains don't stop wiring until we're about 27, 28 years old. So what you do right after college, for a lot of people, really sets their pathway. And so I knew that there would be tremendous personal growth no matter what happened to these kids. And so Andrew was game. I said, I want to make a feature documentary, and I want to follow some of them, and whatever happens is going in the movie. Are you cool with that? Because if someone has a nervous breakdown, that's part of the story. Yeah. And he said, yes, I am, because launching a company is really hard, and some people do have nervous breakdowns, like doing it. It's just it's very stressful and very hard. And our society tends to whitewash or glamorize the startup life. And it's not glamorous. I mean, it's incredibly fulfilling. And one does learn and grow a lot, but it's really hard. And so I think that's one of the things about the movie that I traveled with it for 8 months after its release. And that is one of the things, one of the feedback that we've gotten is that people appreciate how honest and how real it is.
Yeah, I loved in the movie when Andrew Yang says, I think it's towards the end, and he's like, spoiler alert, he's like, people might have a really great company and that's great, or their startup might succeed, but also they might just learn a lot and become the people that they're going to be, and that's the goal of his business or his work, is to make these really great human beings and teach them things, not necessarily make these startups in the city, which might be a nice side effect, but I thought that was really great.
Well, I think that, and for me, that is the biggest theme of the movie. If it's in moving outside our comfort zone that we stretch and grow as people. And I think, if we become complacent or we don't take risks, and I don't mean starting a company type of risk, but any kind of risk, trying something new. I mean, I took gym class today in something I'd never done before. And I mean, I had no idea what I was doing, but I'm
what
like,
did you take?
I took a bar class.
Oh, cool. I really like bar. We should
Yeah.
go together.
Yeah, I liked it too. And I've never done ballet. And
Yeah.
I just like, I'm like, okay, I need to like, you know, expand my horizons.
Yeah.
And not just
it's good for us.
Yeah. But that's like a tiny example. But I think that the more we as people are open to new experiences and to moving outside what is comfortable, that is how we, first of all, see what our strengths are, see what we really love, meet new people, you know, develop new skills, new interests, and it's how we keep growing as people.
Yeah.
And I think that when we stop growing and stop challenging ourselves, that's when we stagnate.
Yes. Yeah. When I was moving to New York, because that's kind of the thing I'm most proud of that I've done so far in my life, and the thing that was most challenging, I remember I saw this quote somewhere, probably like somewhere on the internet, and it was like, growth can't happen when you're comfortable. And I don't know if that's all the time true, but it seemed really true for me in the moment, because I felt like this was so what I needed to do, but in the moment it was so uncomfortable. There were so many things to make sure of, and is this the right choice? And I don't know. And that really propelled me forward. I feel best as a human being when I'm learning and growing. And I don't want that ever to stop until I'm dead.
Right.
Ideally.
I think we all feel like that's when we feel stimulated. And also I think that when we challenge ourselves, oftentimes, and I know for me this was true, I mean, making this movie, or, you know, I started making this film at the same time I launched my own company. So for me, this film was very personal. I identified so strongly with the characters in the film. And in fact, I looked at what they were doing, and they inspired me. Because
me too.
Making the movie was every bit as challenging as what they were going through with their companies. And then when you set the bar, like when you do something that's a challenge, and whether you are like hugely successful at it or not, then like you're like, oh, hey, well, that wasn't so bad. And then you just keep raising the bar on what you're willing to push yourself to do. And like once you conquer a fear, it goes away, and then you can conquer other fears.
I was just thinking about that today. Well, this is kind of a bad example, but I was thinking about it with the subway. Like when I was going to move here and first moved here, I was so afraid of the subway. I was just like, I'm never going to get it. I'm not good with directions. There's no way I can do it. And now it's like, oh, I get it. It's easy. You just have to do it a few times and it's fine. And I was saying today's a bad example because it took me forever to get here. But anyway, that's one other thing. But the point is, I think
but
the
that
more
is my point. That like, even if like it probably took you a long time because of the subway system, not you. But even if we like have missteps along the way, you just like it's like, oh well, I lost my way, but now I got there. Yeah. So it's, you know.
And I use the example to myself as like proof to myself. I'm learning to knit right now, and my friend is teaching me, and it's like so challenging. I want to give up, and I'm like, well, I learned the subway, so I can learn to knit. It's fine. And everything else I've ever tried to do in my life, you just have to kind of have those examples of like, okay, I did that thing that I thought was impossible, and you keep doing it again and again and again. And that's what the movie is so great, and starting your own company. And anyway, we have so much to talk about. So I want to know why Detroit, was that a choice from Andrew? And then how did you decide on both the city and the subjects?
Right. So once Andrew was game, and he was like, "Yeah, I'm in, and I'm comfortable with you telling an honest story." I had to raise funding, and PwC Charitable Foundation came in with the initial funding. I attached Cynthia Wade as my co-director, and then it was like, wow, like now we have to pick a city, because we didn't want to be in multiple cities. We wanted the film to feel cohesive. So it was hard enough, super hard, making the film feel cohesive following 6 disparate stories. So we wanted to ground it in one place. And we met with VFA to hear what was going on in each of their cities. And so we wanted to know what were the different startups where VFA fellows were going. And it was also important to us to follow a few fellows who had already been through the program for 2 years and were launching their own startups. and VFA had only been around for 2 years. So this was the first graduating class in 2014. So for Detroit had a lot of interesting companies, and also 2 fellow founding companies that were just about to launch. And also Detroit, I mean, it's so visually rich. And film is a visual medium. Yeah. And also Detroit was, it was built on entrepreneurship and innovation. Yeah. It was one of the premier cities in our country. And it is seeing an incredible rejuvenation because of entrepreneurship. So it just, and also there is a slogan in Detroit that we came to learn: Detroit hustles harder. And we discovered that is really true. I mean, there's such an entrepreneurial spirit there. And also entrepreneurship it is truly about grit and resilience. I mean, those 2 words are like a cliche now, but they are entrepreneurship. I mean, I think to be successful as an entrepreneur, you have to have such determination. And that's what Detroit has. It has so much grit and resilience. So Detroit, even as a city, mirrors so much the themes of our movie.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it was a perfect choice, and I really loved the film so much, which I already told you. And did you see Rent, the show?
Yes, but a long time ago. Okay, when it was on Broadway.
I just couldn't help it. So I rewatched the movie last night preparing for this, and I love Rent. It's like my favorite. I came here when I was like 7 years old to go see it. And when I came to New York for the first time, and when I was watching the film last night, it reminded me so much of the plot of Rent, where the East Village is replaced by Detroit, and the young artists are replaced by young entrepreneurs, and they're wrestling with the same kind of friction of, new developments coming into this old place, and it just really reminded me of that. I wonder if anyone had brought that up in any of the screenings that you did when it came out.
No, you were the first one.
Really?
But that's interesting.
It seems like because Rent is based on La Boheme, and this seems like a modern day version. I saw so many parallels with it last night.
Oh my God, I have to watch the movie.
You should watch the movie again, and then, because it just seemed like so spot on. And especially the next thing I wanted to talk about is that I love that the film addresses the friction and resistance in the city with the idea of outsiders moving in, primarily millennials. And there's this one scene in particular where one character is riding her bike through the city and the place that she works. The city, for people listening, many of them might know it's super big, and there's different pockets, and she was noticing the vast difference between where she works and what she's surrounded by and where she lives. She's surrounded by transplants where she works, and where she lives she's surrounded by locals. And I love, the film didn't dwell on this fact, but I'm really glad that it was brought up. Was that important for you to mention? And was that, a critique that you got from locals with the film? How did the film go in Detroit?
If Cynthia and I had set out to make a movie about entrepreneurship in Detroit, we would have chosen very different characters. Maybe one person would have been a Venture for America fellow. But there are so many local heroes, and there's so much going on there in terms of grassroots entrepreneurship and locals who are launching companies and small businesses there, who we would have loved to have followed. So because our way into Detroit was through Venture for America and following VFA fellows, and then picking Detroit as the city to follow VFA fellows, they were our focus. Cynthia and I both always felt sad and frustrated that we couldn't also be telling the story of the local entrepreneurs, because they're amazing people.
Maybe
amazing, right? But it was important to us, and the film is very much a celebration of entrepreneurship and how entrepreneurship is the driver of economic rejuvenation, and it is. It's young companies that create all new jobs. Yeah. So it is super important to have new businesses growing up in a place, because otherwise you don't have jobs. But with that comes gentrification and rising housing costs and other things that can drive out locals. So with that also comes a higher tax base and lots of other benefits. But it was important to us to at least acknowledge that not everyone is benefiting yet from what's happening in Detroit, and then in fact it could drive some people out of their homes. And so Dextina does express this, that she wonders if what's happening is helping everyone. And there's been a lot of criticism about even that all the money has gone to building the downtown and not the neighborhoods. But Detroit's sprawling, and you have to start somewhere. And I think the people who, even the city, in rebuilding the downtown, the idea was to, attract people to return to downtown, businesses to return to the city, restaurants, all of that. And money is now going to the neighborhoods and economic rejuvenation and entrepreneurship training in the neighborhoods as well.
And I feel like people don't understand just how sprawling it is. Someone told me once that you can fit all of Manhattan and all of Brooklyn and still have space in the Detroit proper, not even any of the suburbs and surrounding places. So it's so huge that you just kind of have to start somewhere. And that critique is everywhere in Detroit. But I think that I loved so much that the film addressed that, and it was so clear that the stories that you chose to focus on were so good and had such an arc that there just isn't space in the 90 minutes or however long the movie was to go into any other stories, and that's so clear. But I'm so glad that point was addressed in such a mindful way.
Oh, good. There had been a number of other documentaries done about Detroit in years prior to Generation Startup coming out that really accentuated the decay porn. And I think those films were well-meaning. They were trying to shed a spotlight on how Detroit needed help. Mm-hmm. But I think that, first of all, we did not dwell on decay porn. If anything, our film shows tremendous rebuilding. I mean, every time we came back once a month. I mean, there were new restaurants, new buildings. I mean, I remember driving in Detroit was so hard because the GPS would it would reroute me because it didn't know that there was I would get lost all the time because of all the construction. Yeah. So our film is very much in the spirit of rebuilding. And I think that is what people in Detroit appreciate, that it is a positive look at Detroit. And we're very clear also, the VFA fellows we followed, none of them are in Detroit to save the city. Detroit does not need to be saved. They came there to build lives there, not to save the city, which again, I think some of the other documentaries maybe had a bit of a tone of that. Yeah. So the film is part of a cultural diplomacy program with the State Department. So I've traveled with it to Tunisia and to Chile, and Cynthia went to Mozambique, and Dextina went to the Caribbean. I'm going to Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos. Cool. And it's screened in many countries around the world. And what's interesting to me is, in Tunisia, the audiences, they so identified with Detroit. It's in Peru, in places where they are rebuilding, where there's a lot of poverty, but they're hopeful that through entrepreneurship they will rebuild. And the other comment I get everywhere is, wow, we didn't realize Detroit was so beautiful, or we didn't realize Detroit's so cool, or that there's all this rebuilding going on there. So I mean,
did you have any personal connection to Detroit before making the film?
I had never been to Detroit before making the film, and I was nervous. I was, as the producer of the film, I was worried about keeping the crew safe and the gear not being stolen. It's funny. I mean, in the 70s, when I would travel from New York, people would say, "Oh my God, you live in New York, it's so dangerous, and I'd say no, it's fine. And I mean, my view of Detroit was what I had read, and what I had read about Detroit up until we started filming in the summer of 2014. So Detroit was still in bankruptcy when we started filming, and we filmed for a year and a half. But, everything I'd read about Detroit up until then was gloom and doom, and how incredibly dangerous the city was. So, and then, I got there and fell madly in love with Detroit.
That's so cool. So I want to know, I've never talked to someone who has made a film and a documentary, and so I'm so curious, what is the process like? What is the shooting like? And I kept thinking about, there was a lot of footage where the subjects were just speaking to camera, which I'm assuming there wasn't a crew around for those parts. So did you just have them record whenever they felt like recording? And what about the subjects being aware of the crew and the camera? How does all of that work?
Right, so I answered how we picked Detroit, but I didn't answer how we picked the characters, and that ties into the filmmaking. So once we knew we wanted to film in Detroit, we put all of the fellows going to Detroit on film in a sit-down interview situation at VFA has a training camp. And we were looking for, in terms of who we followed, well, most of all, looking for people who were open and who were willing to be vulnerable on camera, and let us in, because we knew we wanted to track the emotional journey.
Yeah.
And people, what we were saying about Phoebe earlier, I mean, people relate to others and root for others who are vulnerable when we allow ourselves to show
real.
Right,
yeah.
to show our weaknesses, our fears, our hopes, our dreams, all of that. That's what's relatable.
Yeah.
So we wanted to find people who were going to let us in emotionally. And then also we wanted diversity. So we wanted gender diversity, racial diversity, we wanted diversity of companies, and diversity of where the VFA fellows were in their VFA journey. So a few fellow founded companies. And then in terms of the filmmaking, we kept the footprint of the crew tiny so that we were pretty unobtrusive when we were filming. It's a verite follow doc, so we didn't, unlike reality TV, I mean, we didn't fabricate anything. We really followed them in their real lives. So the crew was a cinematographer, an audio person, a director, our associate producer, and a production assistant, and that was it.
And so they were living in Detroit, or
no?
Coming?
So we would go for and film for 7 days usually, so a full week, and shoot days are long. They're like 18-hour days. So 7 days every month or so. So in the beginning it was every month, and then as the year and a half went on, it became like every 5 or 6 weeks.
Okay.
But we were there quite regularly, and when we came, we were there for a long time. So like a week at a time and filming. And so the filming consisted of three things. And if you watch the movie, now that I say this, you'll see. We did sit-down interview with each person every time. Yeah. Because that's the kind of the check-in. We did verite follow doc, so following them in moments where, Bonzo was pitching to a store or Papa Joe's, and the redemption, because they had pitched to Papa Joe's when they didn't have the recipe right, and it turned to mush, and then we went back with them at the redemption meeting. Or we filmed with them in the factory up north, or we filmed with Castle going scouting a house. So that's the verite in the moment. And then we also shot what we call B-roll, which is shots of them walking through the city, or making banza, or
going to the ATM.
Right, exactly. So, and then when you are in the edit room, you use your interview footage. Sometimes you see them on camera, and sometimes we took the audio bites of those interviews and put it over B-roll or over a verite scene. So we'd stay in touch with them when we weren't in Detroit, and we'd track what's going on. And then we were also tracking the storylines that we had captured with them. So we were tracking very closely what their storyline was. I mean, if I had raised all the money up front, we would have had probably an editor or an associate editor cutting as we were going, and that would have made it easier, but we couldn't afford that. So I was tracking the storylines just on a piece of paper for each character. Wow. And then that would inform like what we needed and wanted to shoot with them when we came back. So in the case of Bonza, for instance, we knew that once they got their recipe right, we knew that they would want to go back to Papa Joe's for that redemption. So what we said to them was, could you wait until we're there, or could you let us know when you will do that, and then we would build a week around that. So we knew that Castle would be pitching to investors. We knew we wanted to get Castle pitching because one of their story arcs was that they had run out of money. I mean, they were almost out of money and were going to have to fold if they hadn't raised more money. So, and we knew that they had this big pitch coming up to investors. So we knew that we wanted to capture that. So we were in touch with everyone and what was going on in their lives helped us determine when we would come back and film again.
Yeah. One of my favorite characters, there were so many arcs in all the stories, and it's one of those documentaries that really has a story. It's not just B-roll. There's like such an arc for each character. But this particular line I wrote down because I thought this was so interesting, and I related to it so much, even though I am so different from this character. But he says, "I wish I could tell my parents what was going on with my life without them trying to judge or change it." But I think that is something where the specifics of that situation, we'll have people watch the movie to find out where that was, but I think the specifics of that situation are very vastly different from my life, but the sentiment is something I relate to a lot, of that lonely feeling of not being able to relate to my parents and wanting to let them in on my life, but not wanting the feedback, just wanting someone to listen. So I thought it would be really interesting for you to talk about your feelings with that, and have you ever felt that way, as a parent, and how do you deal with that, and why was that important to include in the film?
That's a very complex question. My husband and I have felt very strongly that we've tried to let our kids be who they are, and encourage them to find their own voice and to use their voice. What I told them growing up was, you don't have to be great at everything, but if there's something that's important to you, don't half-ass it. Do that well. So it's like, you don't have to have straight A's, but like, if you care deeply about being an artist, then apply yourself and study that and do that well. Or do it as a hobby and don't do it well, that's fine. But like,
intention.
Yeah, this idea of like not half-assing, but not across the board. I think that our society and parents put way too much pressure on kids to be perfect and to be great at everything and to get straight A's and to like go
or
to
even
the best.
To try a lot of things.
I've always told the kids, like, try it all, like, take a class, and if you hate it, stop taking the class. Like, it's like, you want to try fencing? Sure. Try, like, we'll rent the equipment, and if you love it, then we'll invest and buy equipment. But like, sure, try it. Like, so, and, I would also say to them, like, if you want to, like, whatever you want to do in life, just, like, that's fine. Like, I find it so sad. Parents try to control their kids or try to live their lives or the regrets that they have about their lives through their children. And I try to listen. I try to, when my kids come to me for advice, and I, like, from a very young age have done this, I don't tell them you should do this or you should do that. I listen and I ask a lot of questions, and I try to help them come to, like, their own decision with these, like, questions that cause them to think a little deeper. But it's funny because my middle son is very into meditation and mindfulness, and he reads a lot. So at dinner the other night, he was talking about how he was feeling anxious and certain feelings he was having, and I tried to make him feel better. I said something that I thought would make him feel better, and he said, "Mom, you know what? You don't have to make me feel better. Like, if this is getting to what you said about your own parents.
Yeah.
He said, if you just let me express how I'm feeling and just let me feel it, instead of like trying to assuage my feelings.
Yeah.
And I said, I'm so sorry. Like, I didn't realize I was doing that.
It must be an instinct. Like, you're a
Well,
parent and
that's
you
what
want
I
to
said.
fix it.
I said, as your mom, it pains me
Yeah.
to hear that you're feeling anxious about something.
Yeah.
And about something that, like, I think in the grand scheme of things, like, you don't need to feel anxious about. It's all going to be fine. So it was interesting because, but that's getting to you saying, I wish my parents could understand. And in that case, that was a very immediate. But in terms of the bigger thing of parents and children, I think that, I think the saddest thing is when parents don't let children figure out who they are and live a life that will make the child happy.
Yeah.
Because, and that's even, what Andrew Yang was after with launching Venture for America, because he's first generation immigrant from China, and his parents like really forced him to go to law school, and he came out and he worked at one of the top law firms for 5 months and was miserable, and he quit. And he launched a company and it failed, and another one that failed, and a third one that was successful, but he got that bug of entrepreneurship. And that's when he said, there are too many young people who are taking very safe, conventional, narrow paths because their parents or society is guiding them to do that. And he said, I want to give a path that parents will think is safe and secure, but that is actually enabling young people to take risk.
Yeah. I mean, these interviews, it's so funny. They're such a mirror of my life and where I am in the moment. And today, this leads next to what I want to talk about, which we've talked a lot about the film, and I want to know more about you and how you got into filmmaking and ended up starting your own company, and after taking what is a more traditional path that you were on of working for someone else. And I relate so much to Andrew Yang and the people, some of the people in the movie, of doing the safe path, because I didn't have entrepreneurship modeled for me. I didn't have parents, telling me to try things. I had parents that said, get a job with benefits and a 401k and, then you can figure it out. Don't move to a big city, stay and figure out how to make money first. And I'm glad that I did those things, and everybody has their own path that taught me whatever. But I think it's really important. I've had to find those role models elsewhere, and I'm glad that the internet exists, and I'm glad that I've been able to do these other things. But can you talk about, in your experience of, how you got into filmmaking, and you were working in TV production before, and what was that decision of making the leap to work for yourself like for you?
Yeah. So I came out of college with a degree in comparative literature. I did get a job at, I wanted to do something that combined creativity and business, and got a job during a horrible recession at one of the big ad agencies in one of those training programs.
In New York?
In New York.
So you grew up in New York?
I grew up in northern New Jersey. My parents moved into the city when I was in high school.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
So I did grow up basically in New York.
And then you went to Brown.
I went to Brown and came out with a degree in comparative literature and got this job at an ad agency. There were no jobs when I graduated from college, and I was miserable, and I thought advertising was what I wanted to do because it combines creativity and business. But I was in this training program in crunching numbers, and I realized I didn't care so much about selling product. And it was my parents who kept saying, well, you should quit, because if this is not a path that you see yourself following on, then find a different path.
Yeah.
And I did after 3 months, and the woman was like, what? You're crazy. There are thousands of people who would die for this job. And I said, well, then they should have it. And the irony is that I kind of regret it, because I don't really regret it, but now I'm, doing branded content for advertisers, for brands. So we've come full circle where brands are telling amazing stories and around like really important issues. And I'm excited to be doing filmmaking and storytelling for brands. But it's a little different. It's not about like selling a diaper. I then moved into feature film. My husband and I moved to London, and I met Robert Bolt there, who had written Dr. Zhivago, Lawrence of Arabia, Man for All Seasons, a lot of amazing films. Yeah. And I did all the historic research for The Mission, and from primary sources, and worked with him on an adaptation for TV of a Gore Vidal novel. And then came back to New York and was working in feature film and was one of the producers on David O. Russell's first movie, Spanking the Monkey. Cool. But then when I started having kids, I didn't want to be in LA all the time, and I moved into nonfiction television and was head of production for a few independent production companies, overseeing hundreds of hours of nonfiction television for all the cable companies, so Nat Geo, Discovery, A&E, cool. Lifetime. But and loved it, and it was during the time of infotainment and taking often very complex information and making it entertaining and accessible. When nonfiction TV turned into reality TV, I wasn't keen to be making reality TV, and also I got to an age and stage in my life where I wanted to be master of my destiny in terms of the stories I was telling, and I really only wanted to tell stories of uplift that would put kind of good juju into the world and inspire people. I launched my own company. It was terrifying. It took me 2 years to get up the courage to leave my job. When I told my husband that I was leaving this job, he thought I was crazy. He said, "What? Like, you could retire there. Like, that's such a like great secure job." And I said, "Yeah, but like that's what terrifies me even more." It
goes back to what we were talking about before,
right,
like growth in your comfort zone.
I was not growing anymore, and I wasn't learning, stretching, growing, and I wasn't excited about the programming I was making. And so I had a few super close girlfriends who, with their encouragement, support, like tugging, beating, loving me, and just encouraging me, I finally got up the guts to do this and launch my own company. The first productions we did were we created a web series for Food and Wine magazine, Mad Genius Tips.
So cool.
That was nominated for a James Beard Award last year, and has over 30 million views and has been very successful. And then started working on Generation Startup about 6 months after launching the company.
So cool. So what's next? Are you working on another film? Are you focused on more branded content?
So I just directed and we produced the fall campaign for Chico's, the clothing brand. Cool. So shooting with real women, so real models, not role models, not real models.
Very
so
cool.
Real women talking about being, comfortable in their skin. And
very on brand for this podcast.
Yeah. And they were like all of the women, Chico's cast they were extraordinary. I mean, really, 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 they inspired me. Actively looking for more work for hire projects for brands, branded content, which we love doing, and also developing two long-term projects. So one is a feature documentary. When I was in Chile with Generation Startup with the State Department, I learned about a coding program in Latin America that works with young women who come from extreme poverty, often abuse at home, and in 6 months trains them to be kick-ass web developers.
Cool.
And they have a 75% success rate.
Wow.
Placing these women in well-paid tech jobs. So they have programs in Peru, Chile, and Mexico right now, and they're expanding to other countries in Latin America.
That's great.
And it's founded by two young couples who are like, the love between these four people is so incredible, and the program is run by psychologists, and I've never felt such extremes as I have felt developing this project, because I've gotten to know some of the past trainees and the people running the Peru Outpost and the founders, and I feel such incredible heartbreak when I hear about the stories of some of the trainees and their past. But these women, these young women, they are so strong and so vibrant and so full of joy, and so I mean this, like, they really embody the strength of the human spirit. But also what Laboratoria is doing is extraordinary, because they're taking these women who have no future, and they're training them in 6 months to be coders, to be web developers, and transforming these women's lives, and also doing a lot of psychological development and empowerment work with them to help them confront their traumas of their past and to be whole and to be able to build a strong future. So I mean I am so inspired by what they're doing. So I am determined to make this my next film. And
cool. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, thank you. And
we'll do another podcast after that one.
Yes. And then my daughter made a game that went viral when she was 16.
Girl Code. I'm staring at the poster. Very cool. We're in her room right now.
Well, she made a game, Tampon Run, to combat the menstrual taboo when she was 16, and the game went viral, and she won a lot of awards, and then co-wrote a book with her co-creator called Girl Code to encourage teen girls to find their voice and to learn to code. So I've teamed up with a friend, and we are turning that into a dramatic TV series.
Oh, cool.
So basically taking Sophie and her partner Andy as an inspiration to do kind of a girls meets Silicon Valley type of story.
Oh my gosh, that's gonna be so good.
So we're looking for a showrunner for that.
Wow, that is so cool. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to watch that. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay, so many things I want to follow up on and ask about before I get to the questions I ask everyone, but I think I want to talk about a little bit about your time working in TV and what you would say to young women or just people in general wanting to get into working in TV and or film.
There's so many different paths into working in TV and film, and there's so many different things. I mean, there's one binary, which is working in production, which is on set. And people who take that path tend to start out as production assistants, and then they move up, and they can move up into the more business managerial side of things, which is line producing and budgeting and keeping everything on track, or they can move up in a more creative area, ultimately becoming a director. There are other ways into production, becoming a cinematographer or audio specialist. I mean, those are real hard skills that you either have to go to school for or apprentice, or do a lot of work on your own and Google and read books. But that's a craft and a skill, the audio, the cinematography, and then there, to becoming a cinematographer, there's like the path from like being a lighting PA to being a gaffer or setting the lights to then shooting. And the other spectrum of that binary is working in an office for a producer, so in development. So finding projects, helping, raise the funding for a project, the casting, all of that. The twain meet sometimes if you work for a producer who then goes into production on something. But there do tend to be people who like work in the office versus those who work on the set. Although it's really good to have both because they're intertwined. And then, in terms of film and TV, I wouldn't even make a distinction anymore. When I was starting out, there was a huge divide. People who did TV, and people did film. But now, especially with Netflix and all of the digital outlets, I think that there is very little distinction. Like, people are very fluid and move between like a feature film and a dramatic TV series. And I think, most of the really exciting stuff is happening in TV series. I mean, digital TV series. So it's not about nepotism. It does help to know someone. It always helps to know someone, even in terms of like for me to get work for hire, doing branded content stuff, or for me to raise funding for a documentary. It's often about like getting to somebody I know personally who gets me to somebody who can open a door somewhere. But that said, I'm also a strong believer in just like cold outreach, and I do it in everything I do as an entrepreneur. So if I send out blind, cold emails, I assume that I will have a hit rate of 1%, that like 1% of people will respond to me. I have this thing where I send out an email to somebody 3 consecutive weeks, because it's usually the 3rd time, and
they'll get back to you, the same person 3 times.
Well, what I'll do is I'll send an email, and if I don't hear back a week later, I'll send another one. If I don't hear back a 3rd week, send another one. And if I hear back, it's usually the 3rd time. Yeah. And I've heard that that's actually scientific. And I think that part of it is, and I do this, like I'll get an email from somebody and it's like, oh, that's interesting, but it's not like top priority on my to-do list today. So I'll come back to that.
And then you forget.
Where you forget. You just keep moving forward and get more piled under more emails. So then if you hear from someone a 2nd time or a 3rd time and it is truly interesting to you, you're going to finally, or if you are sympathetic enough, you're going to be like, oh, well, this person's reached out 3 times. Well, I'll, A for effort. But and then I won't do a 4th because that's obnoxious. Like, I feel like, it's, and it's not like, so sorry to bother you. Like, it's not from ever like, so sorry. You don't tiptoe around these things. It's like, and I don't say in case you didn't see my email, because it's just basically like following up from the email from last week. Like,
this is really good advice in any field.
Well, I think that people, and I do a lot of mentoring, and it's one of the things that, like, and I tell my kids this too. I mean, people think like, oh, I don't want to bother that person, or oh, they didn't get back to me, so they don't, like, they're not interested. Maybe they aren't interested, but like the majority of people are super busy. And so if it's not a top priority, then they probably aren't going to give it much attention. But if you are persistent, then you have a shot at getting through to somebody. If you're not persistent, then you won't. Like, you just won't. And then what will happen is you will feel really bad about yourself, because then you'll say, oh, it's personal. Oh, what I'm doing is not worthy, and that's why they didn't get back to me. So
I mean, people ask me all the time, how did you get this person on the podcast? And I was like, well, I send a lot of emails and you only see the yeses on the podcast. Like, I get a lot of no's too, but you don't see those. And that's a skill that I've really had to teach myself. I mean, I just learned a lot right now of, I think I do start a lot of the emails with, oh, just making sure, or so sorry, and I'm not going to do that anymore. I'm going to like be more firm and just following up. This is where we're at. And I do. Do you use Boomerang? No, it's such a great tool for this. Because it reminds you, oh, you haven't heard back in 2 weeks, it'll respond for you, or in a week.
Yeah, I probably should use Boomerang.
It helps me a lot just to remind me, because just as they get busy to not see my email, I get busy and forget to follow up, and I'm like, oh, whatever happened to that? Did I hear back? And it's a helpful tool.
So I'm about to embark on like intense outreach on this documentary I want to do in Peru. So like we've created this hit list of like leading Latino women in the US, and like every company that cares about diversity in tech, and like within those companies, the chief diversity officer, the marketing people, the philanthropic arm, like anyone within those companies who might be interested in, because if you just need one person who's interested, it sparks their interest, who says, let me find the right person here to put you in touch with. So it's about being super persistent. I mean, it's how I got the job at the ad agency when I came out of college. it was a recession. I wanted to work in an ad agency. There was no internet at the time. I sent hand-typed letters
Wow.
to every single ad agency in New York City. Every one of them. And like that is how I got it.
It's a numbers game.
It's a numbers game. It is totally a numbers game. Unfortunately, because it's so labor intensive, it's a numbers game.
Yeah. Wow. I think that's really inspiring to hear, because people think that things, especially with social media, you know, it's so easy to just see people's lives on the internet, especially millennials, and be like, oh wow, they just fell into that. But you don't see the hard work or the time or the amount of no's that I get for the podcast. You just don't see that on social media.
So what I would say is, in terms of those outreach, keep them super short. Cover emails with resumes. I will often decide whether to look at a resume or not based on a cover email. If I feel like it's a form letter, I won't look. If they're typos, like the classic one is when somebody sends it like to me, but they didn't change the name of the company.
Oh my God.
So that's very
Cringe.
common. But also the other thing that I find annoying is when people write and they talk all about what they want to get out of, like, I want to come work for Creative Brief because I think I could learn so much and I could like,
what can you give?
Well, and I care a lot about people who work with and for me having a good experience and learning. I think that is getting back to what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. That is how you engage people, and that's how you keep them happy, and that's how they do their best work if they're growing, learning, stretching. So that is important to me. But I don't, like, I want to hire somebody who comes with the attitude of what can I contribute, and what is like not like take.
Yeah.
So I think that people often don't think in those terms, and this is the other thing, just do your research. Like, especially if you're going to go in and meet with somebody, that's the other thing. I've interviewed people who never bothered to look at the company website or like to look at any of the content we've created. And I mean, we were hiring someone to be the social media manager of the film, and they had not done any, like, they didn't look at anything related to the film, and we had a website up already. So that is shocking to me. People, like, if you are going
It's so easy. It's so easy.
Right. So I do think blind outreach works, but you have to have a stomach for and the kind of be diligent to like really and put in the time and effort to reach out widely and to follow up, and also to do your homework and to tailor each cover email. Keep them super short, but that open 2 sentences should be personal.
Yeah. Oh, such good advice. Okay, I gotta look over my copious notes here to make sure I've covered everything. I wrote something down in your blurb on the website, which I think we already covered, but I want to read it because it was just so good. And you said, it's about when speaking about the movie, it's about the human capacity to step outside our comfort zone, overcome our fear of failure, not follow what others might expect of us, and create our own path forward. I regret that it took me many decades to do that, but it's never too late and never too soon either. Even if you have an idea of what you're doing, even if you have no idea of what you're doing. As our subjects illustrate, the quickest way to learn is by failing and learning from your mistakes, then going back at it with greater confidence and expertise. I loved that so much, and I relate to that of making any sort of leap in your life. And I think we covered this, but is there anything else in the vein of trying something new that you want to let out?
No, I mean,
you kind of said it there.
And again, I think that I mean, we all come from different circumstances and have different needs. So, I don't want to sound glib and say like, oh, just like try things.
Yeah.
I mean, most people aren't going to launch a company. It's really hard, and most people shouldn't launch a company.
Right.
I mean, it does break people, and it breaks people financially, and it's like, but there are many, many ways to step outside your comfort zone or try new things that are not
like a bar class.
Yeah, like a bar class. And so, and I think that, Labib, who went down one of the characters in the movie, went down the startup path, is now working at a job for somebody, not doing something entrepreneurial right now because he has to support his parents. Like he has the reality of he has to actually pay his own rent and their rent, and he needed to earn money and he couldn't take. So it's not that like everybody just throw caution to the wind and like don't worry about rent and how you're going to eat tomorrow. Even my kids, when I tell them like follow your heart and do what you want, I'm not writing them a check. I'm saying figure out how to do that while supporting yourself. It's but again, I think that idea of trying new things, stepping outside our comfort zone, it could be reaching out to somebody you met who seems really interesting. You are afraid maybe they will reject you, but like try. Why? Like, what do you have to lose? Or go try a type of food you've never tried before, even though it seems like really weird.
Go to the event, go to the party. That's definitely saying yes to things.
Yes, say yes. I mean,
I think the house.
So I think the most important thing is just being open to the universe and being open to what the universe brings, because I think that many people they're not even aware of what's available to them in terms of people, relationships, experiences, job opportunities, because they're not open to it, because they already assume, well, that person is going to reject me, or I'm not going to apply for that job because they won't be interested in me anyway, or I'm not going to take that painting class because like I'm going to suck at it, so even though I think I'd enjoy it, like why bother? Like I think a lot of people close doors to themselves because they just don't have the guts to try.
Or something I watch myself do that I have to check myself for is saying I don't have time, when it's really I'm just not making it a priority, or I'm making other things a priority that I think that need to be a priority really, but I'm just scared of the thing that I actually want to do. So I think that's important too.
The I don't have time, it is totally like we all have time for things that are important to us.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right.
Another thing we always talk about is body image on the podcast. And so I think as women, it's something that we all really deal with. And so I would love to hear your perspective on body image as a woman. Is this something that you've ever struggled with? And how do you deal with it, being a person in the world and then a person in power? What do you do mindset wise to, I always frame this question as shifting out of a bad body image moment, whether it's like your physical body or just how you're feeling that day, and so it doesn't become a bad body image day or week? What are things you tell yourself?
Yeah, I mean, that's like, it's wonderful that you talk about that, because I think that it is I think it's so pervasive and so pervasive, and most women don't talk about it.
Exactly.
So when I was growing up, I was a little overweight, not a lot, and I guess in 7th grade I went on a diet and I started losing weight. Wow. And the more weight I lost, the more positive reinforcement I got from everyone around me, who just, the skinnier I got, everyone told me how gorgeous I looked. To the point where when I was in 9th grade, I was anorexic. And really like had such an unhealthy relationship to food and eating, until I went to college. And my freshman year of college, early on, I met the person who's my husband, who was madly in love with me. I mean, he stalked me for like months before.
How did you guys meet exactly in campus?
We had a mutual friend who was one of my best friends in high school who told us to look each other up, and Victor was a junior and I was just starting, and my parents dropped me off a day early from before orientation week and left, and he came up, and the second they left, he knocked on the door and we went to dinner. He wouldn't let me drink Tab, which I don't even know if it exists, Diet Coke, because he said it was carcinogenic. And then that night he asked me to marry him. But
oh my God.
But he said, if you had to marry me or the Ayatollah Khomeini, who was like, you know, the worst despot in the world, like, who would you marry? If you had to marry me or Jeffrey Dahmer, a serial killer,
funny.
who would you marry? He said that he wanted to hear me say, like, I would marry you.
Oh my God, that's so funny.
But of course, I'm the rational being that I am. I said, well, I don't think I would like to marry either of those men, but I haven't met them yet. So
yeah.
But anyway,
which made you even more endearing.
I don't know. He was just super persistent, but I didn't know how to type, and he typed all my papers, and I got a urinary tract infection, and he ran over in the middle of the night and took me to the Brown Infirmary, and like he wormed his way into my heart.
Yeah.
But anyway, but he also, when we started like dating or whatever one did then, living together, but he would always say like he loved me so much he wanted more of me, like, and so somehow his like loving me so much, like I somehow allowed myself to kind of become more comfortable, and at that point I'd been like starving and binging and starving and binging and starving and binging,
the cycle.
Right, so I kind of allowed myself to just accept myself and allow myself. I formed a different relationship with food, which was like, if you want an ice cream, eat the ice cream. Don't deprive yourself. Just eat one ice cream, and then that
intuitive eating
will break you of the craving.
Yeah.
So, and then I just somehow and just became more comfortable. But weight is I've always struggled with it. And then lately, it's funny because I said to one of my best friends lately, who was in the Chico spots, it's like, I feel like I'm now 56 years old. I feel like I'm getting rounder. Like, I get on the scale and I weigh the same. And this is what happens. Biologically, we're meant to get rounder as we get older, because I think it's something to do with, you know, how we have evolved to, like, protect ourselves. But, like, I don't like that I'm getting rounder. Like, everything about me, my belly, my breasts, my, you know, and I feel more folds. But I weigh the same, which is why I'm just like, now, it's funny, because this morning I was like, I wonder if I should go on a diet. I mean, since the days when I was anorexic, I've never gone on a diet. That's ever. Great. Because I don't believe that, like, depriving ourselves. But I eat super healthy. Right. So I eat healthy, and so I have to figure out what I need to do. I eat a lot of nuts. I put nuts in everything. So maybe I have to cut back on the nuts.
Or maybe you have to, like, look, and this is what we talk about a lot, but looking at it is, you know, the fact that you feel good about yourself and you feel good about your life, maybe looking at this as a cultural issue, maybe. And this is a social issue that women have, and like, why like, looking at it as questioning, why does it bother you? And you have this, like, beautiful life and all these beautiful things, like, looking at it as like, oh, from a feminist perspective, you know, why is this such a pervasive issue? And, like, we've made fat bad and thin good in our culture. Right. Have you read the book Intuitive Eating?
No, but I should, probably.
I think you'd really like it, yeah.
Yeah, so I eat healthy and I don't deprive myself of anything. The good thing is that, like, I eat, like, a head of lettuce every day, and that makes me super happy. I would, like, choose that head of lettuce over, like, anything sweet at any moment. Like, I actually don't, my body doesn't, I don't crave sweets, and I can eat them in super tiny quantities. I don't crave starch or sugar or the things that, like, so anyway, but I agree with you. I think that body image is, you know, and I'm a healthy size and a healthy weight, so, and that is the most important thing. And so if it really is an issue for me that I feel like I have too much body fat, I probably should be exercising more, and I'm not. I should be exercising more because it's healthy, not because of any issue having to do with,
or because you want to.
Because I feel great after I exercise, so that alone, like, you feel really good. And you know, I had 2 herniated discs last year from like working 16-hour days on the movie and, like, slumped over, like, a computer or at the edit bay all the time. So like even that alone, just like being active and strengthening my core and all of those are the reasons why I should be exercising more. But yes, I agree with you. I think that and in fact, even today, like even now, my husband feels I'm too thin. I'm not thin at all. But he's like, I wish there were more of you. So, I mean, it is nice to be married to a man who embraces that and who is so loving.
It's really, and so my background is through an eating disorder. So we talk about eating disorders a lot in this podcast. And something that's come up again and again that I've seen as kind of a pattern in the recovery community is that a lot of women will get in really good, healthy relationships, and it's a really great tool in recovery. And I'm not saying at all that it's the only way, but it has been helpful in my own life, and it's been helpful to a lot of people. I know for me that getting into a relationship or liking someone so much helped me to chill out around food and just be like, well, I really like this guy, so I'm going to pretend to be a normal eater, a quote unquote normal eater, instead of, we do these things to try to control and literally make ourselves smaller for the world as women. So I think it's so important to know that can be a really healthy tool, or just maybe you don't even need the relationship, but just to know that you are loved enough to have more of you in the world, whether someone's telling you that, and everyone should have a Victor, but if you don't, knowing that the world does need more of you and it's okay. And I love what you said there about not having dieted for years, because dieting really leads to that diet binge cycle of restriction and binging.
I think eating healthy is important. I think, when I say important, I think if you want a piece of chocolate, like have the fucking piece of chocolate, it's like just like, I think everything in moderation, but even the days when you're not eating healthy in moderation, enjoy it. That's also my attitude. If you're not going to eat healthy, at least enjoy it. Like, don't do it with guilt, because
that's worse for you than anything you
so much. Like anything as long as you're not like hurting someone else. It's like, if anything you do that isn't necessarily the best thing for you, it's like, if you're going to do it, if my daughter's like clubbing and out 24 hours like at a clip dancing, which isn't the healthiest thing, but she's really enjoying it. So it's like, okay, But actually, speaking of my daughter, she wrote her college application about her big breasts because she has large breasts, and she for many years hated herself for it. I mean, she felt really self-conscious, and it was a really funny essay because it like talked about when she started to grow breasts, she was so excited, and like it meant she was becoming a woman and all this, and then how they came to define her, and like she was so embarrassed. And then how as she she did this game and it went viral, and she realized, not because the game went viral, but because she learned how to code. She learned how to code, and she conquered something that was so hard for her, and that she learned through that experience that she is much more than her body, and that she learned to love herself for who she is, and even came to love her big breasts, because that is who she is.
Oh, that's so cool. She sounds amazing. And shout out to the room where we're recording this in. So this kind of lends well to the next thing we always talk about, which is feminism. So I'd love to hear from you how you define your feminism and how you act your feminism in your life.
I guess I'm a feminist in the sense that I take risks, I speak up. I've worked over the years for difficult men. I have a lot of self-respect. And don't let, if there's a situation that's not okay, I will speak up. I don't, and sometimes that does involve issues around, being a woman or around gender.
Another thing that's interesting, I think, to talk about now is social media and technology. So how do you handle your relationship with social media, technology, your phone in general, and being present? How do you handle that balance?
So that's also such a great question, because so I'm 56. I didn't grow up a social media native, which is good and bad. I mean, the bad is it's really, really important to be on social media today. I mean, I have a company. I made the movie. I wanted to get it out into the world. So I think social media can be a really, really effective tool for that. And I should be on it much more. I should have an Instagram presence. I should be publishing a lot more on LinkedIn. And I have a Facebook page that I'm never ever on. I feel really guilty. People wished me happy birthday, a lot of them last year, and I didn't even respond because first of all, I never get as much done in a day as I set out to begin with. So I walk around with so much guilt that my to-do list is much longer than I'll ever accomplish. And then if I added to that getting lost in social media and spending hours every day following other people and putting out my own social media, I would never get anything done ever. So I'm somebody who I like to be present. If I'm working on something, I want to focus on it. If I'm writing a deck, or if I'm with a friend or with my kids, I want to be with them. I don't want to be on my phone. So I have a very conflicted relationship with social media because I really do beat myself up a lot.
Everybody does.
That I don't do it. And when the film has very robust social media, and I do I've created that social media, and I am sure that there's an engine and it's doing its thing, but I have other people who are doing that. Even though I'm the helping be the voice of it and approving everything that goes out,
curating it,
right? But anyway, so that's again, Sophie, for instance, she worked at my daughter worked at Facebook last summer and the summer before, which is kind of ironic because her big gripe with her generation is that she'll go to a party and everybody will be taking photos of the food or taking photos of the party, but not actually
at the party. Yeah.
And she can't stand that. So she has her close circle of friends. They have this thing where when they're together, their phones are away.
Yeah.
She's not somebody who lives on social media but the irony is she's a coder, and she's she's going to spend her life creating writing code that drives all of this.
So interesting.
But so anyway, I don't know what the answer is, because I think that there is a really great role that social media can play, but I also think that it can really and you read so much about teen suicide is way up, and this whole FOMO and all of that, and I think that it can be also so destructive.
I kind of am on the cusp of growing up with Facebook was around when I was in high school, but Instagram wasn't, which is a very, I think Instagram is FOMO. I think that it just should be renamed that, Comparagram or something.
Also.
Yeah, I think for my generation, Facebook seems more for an older generation now, where I feel as Instagram seems more easy and on the go, so it's just there all the time. It's so pervasive. And I went to see Two Dope Queens last week in Brooklyn, and there's this cool company. The founder actually might do the podcast. I forget what it's called. I think it starts with a Y, but it's these pouches. Have you heard of them? That take your phones. So when we walked into the theater, they took our phones and they locked them away, and then they open them up for you when you leave. And we were there really early for the show because it was an HBO taping. And we all just got there, got a drink, hung out. It was me and my 3 best friends from college, and I was like, we don't even need to see the show. This was worth it, of just getting our phones taken away from us for an hour, and just we were forced to be present with everyone. And then the interesting thing was all 3 of my friends had to go to the bathroom, and I didn't have to go, and they needed someone to stay with the stuff at the seats. And I was like, oh, what do I even do right now? I knew no one else there. I just had to just sit and be with my thoughts and be bored, which I think is such an important thing. So anyway, I was thinking about that company, and I bet people will start buying those pouches and having dinner party. I want to, and having dinner parties that are phones go over there, grab a pouch. And I found myself reaching for it and being like, oh, I can't. And it was really healthy.
I do worry about even like young kids now, I mean, parents like give them the phones or give them their
Yeah.
tablets to keep them busy.
And we have no idea like what
Always
this will
bad.
do.
I mean, I think technology is great, but
Yeah.
I think that, introducing those things later and I mean, haven't they even done studies that like when you read an actual book versus reading something on a tablet, you retain more when it's a real book. But I mean, again, that said, Sophie, I see that Snapchat, she with her friends is like this extraordinarily creative outlet for her. I mean, it's a a form of expression, but that's for her friends. I mean, she's not, it's a way to like create these fun things that they share among themselves. It's not like, so it does have the flip side that can be really
totally
positive.
does. And I love it. Like, to me, Facebook is my scrapbook, Instagram is my scrapbook. Like, I sometimes just sit and will scroll through mine of like, this is my life. And I have that same relationship with it of sometimes I love it and other times it makes me really sad because it's taking me out of the moment. But it's something that I think... I was listening to a Fresh Air episode with a tech writer from the New York Times, and he was saying how, for the first time in history, technology, people are he's realizing, and sounds kind of bleak, but in his book, he's like, for the first time, people are studying technology and realizing that it's always in the past benefited people's lives, and for the first time people are like, it actually might not be beneficial in some cases. It might be harming people's lives, which is an interesting thing to think about. And
well, also it's automation is going to put potentially half the people working today out of jobs in the next 10 years. So I mean, that is something that we have I mean, it's okay as long as they can have income and find a purposeful life in other ways. It's
all really interesting. And I feel like we could talk about this forever, but I feel like there is definitely a swing of like Sophie's generation and the generation below me of wanting to do things offline and wanting to be more offline and make that. I feel that too, of like using your hands and knitting or doing other things or being outside. And okay, so I want to talk a little bit about how you handle stress and doing so many things. And I wrote this book, as you know. I brought you a copy, actually. I stopped at Barnes & Noble and bought it, and the guy was like, oh, your name on the credit card matches the author. And I was like, oh yeah, it's so funny. But anyway, I wrote this book about journaling, so I would love to know, how do you handle stress? Have you ever you studied writing in college. Are you someone who processes things through journaling? What is your relationship to writing then?
Wow. I mean, I kept a journal when I was in young, in like middle school, high school, and a little bit in college. And I don't have time to do it now. I would love to. I should get back to it. Actually, I think that's how I developed a voice as a writer. I mean, was through writing in a journal when I was young. I mean, it's like, and all three of my kids journal a lot. Cool. It really is for them really, really important in many, many, many ways. So, but the writing I do now is all for work type. I mean, I'm writing pitch decks or I'm writing emails. Or
I feel like sometimes I'm a professional email writer. Like, that's all I do.
Totally. Yes. I feel that way a lot too. So in terms of stress, I mean, I don't feel like I'm under stress, but I grind my teeth at night.
Me too.
Do you?
Have a bite guard?
I have a bite guard, which I can't sleep without now.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's genetic or if it's stress. And then whenever I go for a massage, like the person is like, oh my, like they when they touch me, they're like,
me too. They're like appalled.
They're like, and it's usually those places where they don't speak a ton of English, like they're the hardcore like Chinese masseuses, but they're always like in shock.
They're almost like angry at me. Like they're like, oh, you need more massage.
Right. I don't know if it's angry. It's more in like kind of stupefied. Like, how can I be walking around like with these nuts in my back?
Yeah.
It's like, you carry all your stress there. So much stress.
Yeah. And I think it's the leaning over the computer.
Yeah. Right. All those things. So anyway, I don't think of myself as stressed out. I don't know. When I was younger, I was like, I think much more anxious. I think that and I think this might come with age. I just like, and when I had my first child, I mean, when I had him, I was producing feature films, and I was like hardcore, like, you know, was going nonstop, and I would go to bed at night and the to-do list in my head, and I would wake up in the morning and like, you know, really like, and having Avery forced me to like spend hours not doing, like, you like when you have a child, like hours on the floor just playing. And I think that was very healthy to learn, like, to let go of like, okay, I'm going to get half as much done today than I intended to, but that's okay. So unless there's like a hardcore deadline, like when we were cutting the film and trying to make the date for the cutoff date to apply to a film festival, I was literally working 16, 17, 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, because we had to, like, we really wanted to make that deadline. So I have the capacity to go like nonstop, but I also do try to be kind to myself. And for better or worse, I'm not a machine. I am like someone who can be really in the moment. So if like one of my children needs something, or I'm with a friend and like I wanted to get home in time to like get a bunch of stuff done, but we're having a lot of fun together, or somebody needs me, I'm going to be there, and I'm not going to be like, oh, well, I have to go now to get things done. Like, I'm just like, I'm in the moment. Yeah. And so I think that it's important to be able to be in the moment and to enjoy those moments, even if it means that like I'm not getting as much done every day as I wanted, unless again there's like this hard deadline. But as a business owner, it's hard because like there's always more I should and need to be doing to keep driving the business forward.
Yeah, totally. I think what you said there about like there are times where you have to just like really push and put your head down and work, and then there are periods in your life where you can give yourself self-care and rest. And I think it's knowing yourself well enough and having the self-awareness and listening to actually do it.
Well, I think, again, maybe it has to do with getting older, but now my body won't let me as much. Like I ended up with the 2 herniated discs because it was my body saying like, okay, you abused me. Now I'm going to like make you take care of me. And if I go too long with not getting enough sleep, I get a twitch in my left eye.
I get that too. Yeah, what's wrong? We're like the same.
So if you have a twitch in one eye, it's stress and sleep deprivation. If you have a twitch in both eyes, then it's a medical condition. You need to get checked. But one eye, and yes, it's totally, it's 100% stress and sleep deprivation.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah.
That's what I suspected from Dr. Google. Okay, so this is one of my favorite questions to ask because it really gives you a window into someone's life, I think. So we talk about morning and evening routines. So what are the first 3 things you do when you wake up in the morning, first couple of things, and how that affects the rest of your day? And then at the end of the day, especially as an entrepreneur, what are the last few things you do before bed, and how do you wind down and shut down at the end of the day?
Oh my God. I feel like you're outing me in all of my like worst practices.
No.
But and again, just like I was thinking, like I have to get better about going, you know, working out more. Also, I've been thinking about forcing myself into a nighttime routine. Even a morning routine. I mean, I'm not a routine person. I mean, I don't, and maybe it has a little bit to do with like being young and having anorexia, and then like saying, okay, I'm gonna not diet, and I'm not gonna hold myself to like these like regiments. I'm not like someone who's super regimented. I'm very disciplined, but not regimented, and they're different. So but when I wake up and I love to have a cup of coffee. Like I just need, I remember when I was growing up and my mother would say like, don't talk to me, I haven't had my coffee yet. And I used to think that was so weird, but I like that. I'm like, I just love to wake up and have like it's mostly like half coffee, half milk. I heat up the milk, so like my latte, coffee milk, my latte. We get 3 newspapers, so the Wall Street Journal, the Financial Times, and the New York Times. I mean, these days I get so depressed looking at them, so I vacillate between like not wanting to see them because it's like, oh my God, I'm going to get too depressed to like, I have to see them. What's going on in the world? Is the world still there? But anyway, and then because of the herniated discs, I do my stomach exercises because like I've learned that like
I was just sat up straighter.
I know, but if I stretch and do like some core, I feel really good, and if I don't feel good. So like I'm really cool. I am, and I'm good about discipline. Yes, well, because the doctor was very clear. He's like, listen, there's no magic bullet here. You do exercises the rest of your life and you'll be fine, and if you don't, you won't. Mm-hmm. And like, you know, so again, back to the body kind of telling me like in its own way that I have to take care of myself. And then so like, you know, and then some mornings I have like early meetings or early breakfasts, and then I'm like up and out, and then other mornings I'm like out way later than I should be because I just get kind of like involved in like, I guess that's me time. Yeah. Because at night I tend to, well, if I'm out, but even when I'm out, like I tend, when I get home, I get on the computer, I try to answer emails that I didn't get to during the day, or I try to like research, like if I have meetings the next day, I'm like prepping for them and research, like, and I often end up going to bed at like 1, coming off the computer and getting into bed, which is a really, really bad thing to do.
Not great for the eye twitch, but okay.
Not great for anything, although I'm fortunately somebody who is, I'm very good about like, I get into bed and I fall asleep for the most part.
Me too, yeah.
For the most part.
I can fall asleep right now. Like
right, so
not because you're boring, just because I can fall asleep easily.
Right. So, but I mean, you know, I don't think it's the healthiest thing. I think that a morning routine would probably be a good thing for me, and a nighttime routine. But
well, it sounds like you kind of have a lovely one. I think you're being hard on yourself.
Oh, I don't know how lovely it is, but
yeah, you've got your coffee. It sounds nice. Sounds nice.
It is nice. It, like, you know, I guess after all those years of like getting up and getting like 3 kids, and I had them like very far apart because I never stopped working. So there were many years when I was like up and getting kids out the door into school, which was like so frenetic.
Yeah.
That like maybe now I am like, I give myself like, except I don't know, I should. Again, we get back to the shoulds.
Yeah, I don't think you need the shoulds. I think you're doing great.
I don't know. I probably would like to set the clock back 2 hours and get up earlier and out the door earlier and like go to bed earlier. Yeah. That probably would be a good thing.
Yeah, I think I need more sleep because I didn't even realize that we got an extra hour last night. Like I just was like woke up just as tired as I like normally am. So I don't know. Okay, this is our quickfire round. So just say the first thing that comes to mind and don't think about it too much. They start off easy and get more challenging. So I'll warn you. Favorite color?
Black.
Favorite day of the week?
Every day.
Hour of the day?
All of them.
Greatest lesson on motherhood? Parenthood.
Unconditional love.
Greatest lesson on relationships?
Unconditional love.
Where are you with greatest lesson on spirituality, God, what happens when we die, all of that?
I think we live on when we die. Whether that is in other people's hearts and minds. But you know, my father died 6-7 years ago, and I feel he's so with me at every moment. So I do think we live on.
Yeah, really well said. That was beautiful. What is something you're afraid of, but you're doing anyway? How are you challenging yourself right now?
I'm challenging myself in so many ways. I mean, I'm terrified to have my own company. It's a huge responsibility, but I love it. I'm terrified to, you know, direct this documentary that I want to get off the ground because it's going to be hard, but it's like the most passionate thing I am about in like anything, like, you know, I feel so excited and like such intense positive emotion about it.
Yeah.
So
cool. Have you read The War of Art?
I haven't. I should.
It's a good book, and he says in there that we will feel the most resistance to the things that we're like meant to do, that we're most passionate about, and so you have to push through that resistance to get them out in the world.
Well, I think about like, oh my God, I'm gonna do this film in Spanish, which I feel comfortable about, but I'm gonna do this film in Peru, a country that's like, you know, tough to navigate and so far away, and like I think about all, like, you know, all of the, like we all do when we're embarking on something that's like big and scary and new. It's like normal to think about the what ifs, but like that doesn't matter, because I know that I fundamentally feel confident that it's going to be a beautiful film, and that I will conquer like all those fears and do it.
Of course you will. Amazing. Okay, so you can invite 5 people to a dinner party. Who do you invite? What do you cook/eat? And what do you hope you talk about? And what do you hope that doesn't come up that you don't want to talk about?
Oh my God, that question's too overwhelming. There's so many people I would want to invite to a dinner party, and dead, alive, close friends, people I've never met. And what would I cook? I mean, I used to be a good cook. I am very out of the habit, and when I cook, I'm always in a rush, so it's always too fast, and I don't have the patience. I make a really amazing salad. So I would make a big plentiful salad with, like, you know,
what's going in the salad?
Lots of different greens from the farmer's market. Cool. You know, the obvious ones, but my favorite lettuce these days is this red leaf lettuce and dandelion. Cool. And kale, and then I love a grain, whether that's you know, quinoa or farro, or and definitely a cheese, Parmesan or feta, and definitely
like
nuts.
Salad
definitely
already.
nuts,
Yeah.
and then beets. I'm like,
I love beets.
Obsessed with beets these days. I love putting strawberries or raspberries. In with the beets.
Ooh, I bet that'd be really good.
And then I'm obsessed with Fairway makes a super premium balsamic vinegar that's theirs, and their unfiltered olive oil, and like they're the most flavorful, those two.
Amazing. I just got at the grocery store yesterday this they're fermented beets with ginger, and I've just been putting them on salads, kind of like sauerkraut, but it's just beets that have ginger in them, and it's so good, and they're like ready made, and anyway,
that sounds great.
Yeah, I feel like you'd like it.
And then, I mean, sometimes I put in salmon or chicken or
whatever. Cool.
Yeah.
That sounds delicious. Okay, so this next question is really just a way for you to recommend things, but I frame it so it can be all-time favorites or things you've liked forever, or recent favorites that you want people to know about. So I usually frame it that you're trapped on a deserted island, and you can only bring with you one book, one movie, one TV show, one piece of music, and one food. So it can just be like first thing that comes to mind, or things you've loved forever.
So one piece of music is easy.
Okay.
My middle son is a writer-composer, so I would definitely bring one of his songs.
Cool.
Or one of his musicals.
Yeah.
Books. My favorite book, but I haven't read it since I was in college, was James Joyce's Ulysses. As a comparative literature major, there was one required class, and that was to read Ulysses, and then each week we would apply different literary theory to it. So Marxist theory, or Freudian theory, or feminist theory, or
cool.
And I read that book with like 3 guides at my side, like line by line.
Wow.
What I have to do is Symphony Space every year. They have actors come and they read it during
cool.
James Joyce Day. So I mean, it's been like my big to-do list is to go back and reread it.
Yeah.
And then TV show. There are a lot of them. I mean, it's like in my head running through, and I'm not gonna pick one. Of each.
Yeah. No, that's cool. Food that you'd never get sick of?
Lettuce.
Nice. I think that's all the categories. Okay. So the name of this podcast is Let It Out, and it's super long, and we go over a lot of things. So is there anything that you wish that I would have asked you that you really wanted to talk about that you never get to talk about? Do you feel like I wrung you dry for all of your Cheryl wisdom? Anything?
No, you are so wonderful. We could like talk forever. And it sounds like we have a lot in common.
Yeah, we got the same eye twitch.
Right.
Hopefully not.
No, but I think you have asked amazing questions and been incredibly comprehensive. So I think that we've covered a lot of ground.
All right, that was my episode with Cheryl Miller-Hauser. Make sure you watch Generation Startup. I genuinely loved it so much. I really think you will too. Follow the movie and her on all of social media, and follow me. Let's be friends on all of social media at Katie Dalebout. And thank you one more time to the sponsors, Juice Beauty. I love you guys so much. I use your products. I love them. I love your founder, Karen. I love that your products are not only helpful to making me look the way I want to look. I think makeup is really just about highlighting what you like and covering up what you don't like. And Juice Beauty does that, but it also nourishes your skin, which is great. So if you want to try them for 15% off, go to juicebeauty.com/letitout or just follow the link in the show notes. Also, thank you so much to careof.com. Actually, it's takecareof.com, but thank you to Careof. They are my favorite way to take supplements. They deliver them to me in a personalized container with my name on it with exactly what I need. They are great for people who are prenatal or they need natal supplements or whatever on the spectrum of motherhood that you are. They even have pregnancy and post-pregnancy packs customized for you. So you can check those out too. And if you, like me, are not pregnant and don't want to be right now or maybe ever, you can still use their products too. They are wonderful and they come to you in personalized daily packs. Very convenient to take with you on the go. Okay, like I said, if you've watched the movie that we talk about quite a bit in this episode, Generation Startup, it's on Netflix now. I loved it. It takes place in Detroit. Cheryl's the director of it. Well, you will really like what's coming to you after this because we get pretty inside baseball with the film and I ask some questions that I was curious about. So stick around for that. Also, I'm going to tell you the emoji for the episode, which is the camera. It's the one if you say movie in your phone, the one that comes up. So if you are still listening right now to me rambling, let me know and put that on my Instagram. Comment that on any one of my photos, tweet that at me and at Cheryl, and just let us know that you're still listening. Oh, and one more thing. If you are wanting to start a podcast and bring a podcast to life, email me. Let me know. Email katie@katiedalebout.com. And let's talk about your podcast and how I can help you. I've been hosting this podcast since 2013, and I would love to help other people bring their podcasts to life because, like I keep saying, this is my favorite thing I've ever done. So email me and let me know. Love you guys. Bye. Have some self-serving questions about the film that I just want to know, that I'm curious about. Did you ever get all of the subjects in a room together, and what was their reaction to the film?
Well, we have. I mean, because they were part of this fellowship program, they were together in Detroit sometimes. The funny thing is that we had scenes with some of them together. I mean, the Castle and Bonza guys
I was going to say, that was such a great tie-in.
Well, they lived together in the
Right.
house, and they worked together in that house. So, like, even though they were from separate companies, they, like, that was organic.
Yeah.
But, like,
You didn't know that was going to happen when you...
No. Did we know? Maybe. We knew that the Castle guys had already bought a house.
Uh-huh.
They bought a house at auction for, like, $8,500 that was in shambles, and they renovated it themselves and didn't know what they had no clue what they were doing, and they ended up living there in the winter and working there in the winter with basically almost no heat.
Yeah.
So that's
just watch the movie. It's so good.
Well, that's probably my favorite moment, when Max is in the tent with the space heater in the kitchen in January, in like it's 45 degrees in the house.
Yeah, were you there for shooting that?
Yes, I was there for a week in February, and like bundled in winter coat and like hat and scarves, filming in the house. I was freezing in that house. But so because the Castle and Bonza guys lived together and worked in that house, I mean, seeing them together was normal. But when we were close to the end of cutting the film, we would have people come and watch, and we would get feedback. And it was such a mess still. I was sure that we would never have a cohesive film. But when they saw like Kate in a scene with Max, they were like, wait a minute, how does Kate know Max? Like, I'm confused. Or we had some great moments with Dextina and Kate, but people were like, how do they know each other? So we then didn't have any scenes with them. But yes, we when I finished the film, I came to Detroit with it, because I still had to raise more money, because we wanted to control our distribution, because documentary distribution is broken, and we didn't want some distributor taking it out in the normal way of it playing at movie theaters across the country to like empty audiences. We wanted to open theatrically in 3 markets, get a lot of press, which we did. So we opened theatrically in New York, LA, Detroit, and then did hundreds of event screenings around the country. So where major corporations, venture capitalists, startups would do either internal screenings for team building, or would license the film and bring together like people within the startup community within a city. So I went to Detroit to raise money to underwrite our distribution. And that's when I showed the film to our characters. So they all came to this screening. And they were extremely moved. They were very nervous, because they had never seen anything. And they were very, very, very moved. And I got, like, I think the greatest compliment from Max, who said, you know what, I was really embarrassed watching myself, but I think you were so true to me. Like, you really, really captured me. And that's what we heard from all of them. You had asked earlier about the one thing when I was saying the 3 different elements of the film. The one I forgot to mention was we gave all of them GoPros. So they all... and we asked them to do video diaries with the GoPros. So it was whenever they felt like doing it. And at first they were like a little awkward and not very forthcoming, and we're like, no, just like talk to it like you're journaling, like pretend you're writing in a journal, and that's how you should use the GoPro. And some of them got I think so used to using the GoPro and found it cathartic.
You could tell kind of that they, from the beginning to the end, that it was less performative and more just them stressed or sad, where at the beginning it was like they were in a better mood every time.
Well, I think that some of them were surprised at like that they had shared some things on the GoPro, but I mean, we had far, far, far more revealing stuff from them on GoPro that we didn't put in the movie.
Yeah, I bet you probably know so much about these people.
but yeah, sometimes we would watch the GoPro footage and we'd say, what were they thinking? Like they sent that to us, but we were like, funny. We weren't looking to like horribly embarrass them. So we like. But anyway,
that's so funny.
But I forgot your question.
About their reaction.
Oh, right.
Together,
then we did this event screening, and some of them travel. I mean, I was on the road with some of them for a long time. I mean, like LinkedIn flew a bunch of us out to Silicon Valley and screened the film in all their offices around the world during a professional development day.
Oh, that's great.
And I mean, we did, I did event screenings with a bunch of them along the way.
Cool.
So, yeah.
Yeah, cool.